Okay, we've got 12 people now, and it's 12:31, so 4:31. Sorry. So let's go and really get stuck into this. Hope to go on for about 30 to 45 minutes. If people have got questions, by all means, throw them in there, and I'll try and answer them as best I can as we, or probably towards the end. So today's first webinar on energetic study of famous buildings is Parliament House, Canberra, and the reason why I choose Parliament House, Canberra is that for many, many years, I've been conducting a one-day introduction to intuitive building biology courses around Australia. And at the end of the day, after a day of learning and teaching people how to read energy, they're pretty worn out and tired. So at the end of the day, I would spend the last hour reviewing what I've found with Google Earth regarding Parliament House, Canberra, and being an Australian and Australians are all very, very interested. And this is probably the 5th or 6th webinar so far now, and we can't talk about EMF forever. There will be other topics which will come up and cover in the future. And if you've got requests, absolutely send your requests in on any topic which we could run a webinar about. We're open to anything. So let's start with a look at Parliament House, Canberra. And I'll just share the screen, and you'll see probably the end of me rubbing my nose for quite a while because of the share screen mode for hopefully most of the webinar. So bye to my old face and say hello to share screen. So here's Google Earth and Parliament House, Canberra. It's an interesting building. It was built in the late 80s. It was the next step up from the old Parliament House in Canberra, which was, there's a baby, what I call baby Parliament House, which is the old Parliament House, which is just in front of it. And both buildings have some very interesting energetics, but we'll start with the Parliament House, the current new they call their new Parliament House. Just some interesting trivial facts about it. When it was being built, I was working in construction industry in Melbourne, and I was working with certain contractors which actually worked on Parliament House during the construction. I think the builder, I won't name, the name started with C. I think they still might be around, so I won't implicate them. But they actually treated the contractors like they were slaves, and payment was really, really slow afterwards. The stories that went around Melbourne from all the contractors that worked on Parliament House, Canberra, were like, wow, it was like there was some sort of draconian overlord pushing them and shoving them around, which isn't a nice thing to happen on a building site. And that sets up an energetic decline over the whole construction site, because if you start ordering people around like a Roman soldier, people get a little bit annoyed about it. No, it's okay. Okay, someone said headphones. All right. People get a little bit annoyed about it, and then they get disgruntled, and their emotional pain body charge becomes out of control. Pain body charge. Make sure I'm plugged in, if that's clearer for people. That emotional pain body charge becomes, call it a geomagnetic charge, and that results in a geoelectric charge over the whole construction site, which creates radiation coming out of the ground. Just moving on from the history of the construction and what actually went on, which was almost probably typical of a lot of the building sites back then, still happens these days. That's why many, many years ago, I thought this is too dangerous to work in this industry, let's get out. Something to start with Parliament House is when you look at the roof structure, there are a lot of pyramids on the roof structure. And I'll just move this out of the way. If you look up here, we've got the map aligned to north. And what people don't know, and I learned a long, long time ago with pyramid shapes, is that unless a pyramid is actually aligned to north-south, and these are not aligned to north-south, whatever energetic advantages you get from a pyramid are totally thrown out the door. I'll just give you a little example. Can you go get one of those little pyramids on the shelf, please? I learned this a long, long time ago, because back in my very early days, it was very popular to make harmonizers in a pyramid shape. There was in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a resurgence of interest in pyramid shape, claiming that they created all types of entities, blah, 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 whatever. And here's one of our original Orgonium pyramids, which we produced in the late 90s. They were really nice. They were frequency infused. However, the shape of them only created a charge went vertically up, which was a negative charge. And if they were not aligned to north correctly, then that didn't happen. And so here we have these skylights, and there's one there, there's a few, there's another pyramid within a pyramid here on the roof of Parliament House. Another interesting thing about a pyramid structure is that what people don't know is that the underside of a pyramid has a really, really toxic energy. And I'll show you something here. I'll deviate. This is a famous pyramid structure in the form of the Shrine in Melbourne. And if we go to it, and nothing against what the Shrine is all about, and no disrespect to any souls that lost their life in the war. The war was a tragic, terrible thing. But here, if you look at Shrine of Remembrance, it's a pyramid roof. This balcony you can see here, you can actually walk up to and get a view over the gardens. And as you walk up the stairs, you're coming up under the underside of the pyramid. And the underside of the pyramid creates a positive charge. It's actually harmful radiation. And I can tell you from from experience of many, many years ago, doing a study of the Shrine of Remembrance, that I remember walking up the stairs and the oxygen getting sucked out of my lungs and feeling so sick and going, wow, this is a real testimony to what happens with the underside of a pyramid. That sort of leads to our current knowledge now of mouldy and roof cavities. And a lot of roof cavities may not exactly be pyramid shaped, but they're like that. And that shape projects a charge going down. So let's go back to our Parliament House, Canberra. Oh, where are we going? If only we could get from South Africa to Canberra in 8 seconds. Maybe some people can. You never know. Okay, coming back to Parliament House again. So the interesting thing were all these pyramid structures on the roof. For the people who are conspiracy theorists and really way out there, and especially those people who've read Zecharia Sitchin's The 12th Planet, which talks about the Nephilim and the winged disc. If you look at this car park structure here and this oval, and many, many years ago, there wasn't this shrubbery around the oval, it was quite defined. Some people have pointed out to me in the past, oh, look, there's a winged disc, which is Nephilim symbolism, so to speak, but I sort of don't buy into that. But that's an interesting one. People like to pull that one out. And then there's this type of structure here, which is a pond. And other people said, oh, that's a solitron generator or an energy generator that is famous in capital cities of certain countries around the world. I sort of don't buy that one, but that's an interesting observation by other people. Okay, so the energetics of Parliament House, what's it like? Well, at the moment, I know there's at least one geocleanse in Parliament House. It's been there for many, many years. One of my distributors, she has someone who works in Parliament House who likes to have a geocleanse to keep the energy clear. It needs that because of the negative psychic impression directed at all the politicians working there and for what they stand for. The negative psychic impression comes from all those people around Australia who've got a beef. That's emotional pain body charge. And it's comes in as energy lines directed to Parliament House. I know many years ago, probably 10 years into the occupation of Parliament House after it was completed, that there was knowledge that the energy of the building was really bad, but they couldn't work out what it was. It's quite plain and simple to me. And that they employed a Feng Shui practitioner, and I think they paid her a couple of grand to come in and try and fix the problem, and nothing worked. They couldn't fix the problem. Feng Shui is great, but when it comes to radiation and charge, it just doesn't cut it. It's actually a fact of life. I, many years ago, started doing, before the geo cleansers actually went in there, I did some expos in Canberra. And while in Canberra, got a chance to drive around this ring road around the outside to have a bit of a look and feel the energy. And it was really bad. It was enough to almost make you vomit. You would almost think that there was a lot of deaths on the property because it was a strong bioplasmic charge, but I wouldn't say deaths or anything like that. It's the negative psychic impression charge from all the people around Australia. And it's a fact of life. It happens anywhere. It can happen, you know, at your local council building. It might happen at a business down the road that's poisoned everyone with food poisoning. It could be anywhere. It's not just this place here, this building. But the energy is clear now because of the geocleanse. Then there was another thing I discovered, and I'll show you a map in a minute, of the interesting layout of grid lines. And these grid lines are fissures. And a fissure is a fault line in the ground, and they have water in them. And they create a radiation charge above them, roughly about 5 meters wide. And I know for a fact from some of the properties I've looked at where people have had contracted cancers from living there over many years, where they've been living in houses which have had a fissure crossing or one fissure grid line running through them, that they do cause a lot of geopathic stress in the body. My colleagues in Europe talk a lot about water veins. Their knowledge isn't really up with mine with the fact that they're really fissures. They, for many years, have been saying that fissures, or sorry, water veins, cause cancer. And building biology and its origins of building biology come from Europe, from Germany and Denmark. And back in the old days, in the true building biologies, they didn't use EMF meters. They used tools like biotensors and other tools. They use intuitive tools because a biotensor or an intuitive tool doesn't lie, it reads the energy correctly. So let's look at the grid layout of Parliament House, Canberra. And this is really interesting. This is a little map I constructed earlier on. And these grid lines you're seeing here are fissures. And from here to here, it's roughly 580 or 508 meters across. I measured it before. There are fissures within fissures here, but I thought this was really interesting because you had a fissure crossing over the direct centre of Parliament House. Then you had the fissures which ran across the boundaries, like up here. I thought that was really fascinating. There's some speculation around that the architecture of Parliament House is a little bit creepy. And it looks a little bit creepy too. It looks more like a fort or a defence building, or like a fort to ward off an enemy with the big panels at the front. And you can imagine the skirmishes that kids could play with toy soldiers with a model of Parliament House. The fact that it doesn't sit directly to north isn't a conspiracy theory or anything like that. It had to be in alignment with the old Parliament House. So I'll just remove this image here. And there's the old Parliament House here. So we had the old Parliament House here and new Parliament House here. So without the geocleansers there, those fissures themselves will create a deteriorating energy in there. With those pyramid structures and the skylights, that would also be another issue, projecting energy down into the building. The negative psychic impression before the geocleansers went in was a huge issue. Like, as I said, when I did expos in Canberra before the geocleansers went into Parliament House, I drove around the ring road one day and almost vomited by reading the energy at a distance, like, wow, there's really something big going on. And that would have a huge impact on the emotional stability of those people working in there. Not everyone agrees that they're all good or bad guys or whatever. We've had some great experiences with a local federal politician over some issues a couple of years ago. I praise them like you wouldn't believe. And they went out overboard to help us at numerous levels. But there's always a good with the bad, if you know what I mean. Let's go look at the new Parliament House. Now, the new Parliament House, to those who know how to read energy, has a really nice light energy. It doesn't have the darker energy that so that's the old Parliament House, that the new Parliament House had. Okay, back up until the old Parliament House was decommissioned, there was all sorts of politics going on, and the one I can remember as the biggest issue as a kid was the sacking of Whitlam. I remember the headmaster of the school I was in at the time, I think I was in year 5, and Brother Michael from the De La Salle College I went to, coming into the classroom and going classroom by classroom and saying, guess what? Prime Minister's just been sacked, and everyone was like, oh, shock, horror type of thing. So it would have also suffered the same negative psychic impression energies from the people of Australia disgruntled with whatever was going on. But the old Parliament House has a really nice energy due to, let's get the right screenshot here, this. These 2 lines here are drawn in, not in red, I've drawn them in blue because they're ley lines. And they're quite wide ley lines, and ley lines create a negative charge, so they're healthy radiant energy lines. And the crossing of the ley lines over the centre would have energised the whole building. So any negative energy coming into the building caused by people's opinions Australia-wide was diffused and neutralised by the fact that it had the ley line crossing over it. And if you look back to the design and the placement of the old Parliament House and the original design of Canberra, that was all designed by Walter Burley Griffin. And if you don't know, Walter Burley Griffin was a huge Steiner fan. And as we know, Rudolf Steiner was into energy. He was all about energy. If you've ever been to a genuine Rudolf Steiner built house, no door frames are square, no rooms are square, everything's off center, everything's asymmetrical, and there's energy in the asymmetrics, which is what Steiner actually found. And Steiner was big on ley lines. Steiner, from where we live here in Frankston South, only 5 minutes down the road, sorry, not Steiner, get right. Walter Burley Griffin built Ranelagh Estate, which is only half an hour, 15 minutes down the road from here, which is in Mount Eliza, and it's an estate where none of the roads are straight. They're all curved, and one curves into another and another. They're quite wide streets and big blocks of land. So it's quite a very, very pretty suburb to actually live in and even just to visit. So Walter Burley Griffin knew exactly where to place Parliament House. So it made the most of the beneficial energies for, what would you say, the good of the people of Australia, if we believe in that, as in the decisions that were being made around where we go, what we do with our economy, who we go to war with, who we trade with, and whatever. So very interesting. I'll show you another image of another famous structure, which we will review maybe later on, which has exactly the same ley line crossing. And these ley lines are roughly 20 or 30 metres wide. The drawing package that comes with preview with markup doesn't give me any wider than that, so I can't really truly depict the actual width of the ley line. It's just a rough indication. But if we look at Stonehenge has exactly the same thing going. It has a ley line crossing over the middle of it. The stones in this cylindrical shape around the outside and their placement and what they're made of and everything else amplifies the ley line energy across the land. You know, probably history doesn't know enough about the true knowledge of what Stonehenge was all about. But my guess is that it may have been to aid with farming, especially crop growth, because if you create a beautiful negative charge across the land from an energy generator like this, you are going to get better crops, and better crops with better nutrition too. Okay, so back to our Parliament House. So I've been yapping for a while here. So what I might do is, if I can get this working properly, okay, we've got some questions coming up. Okay, no questions. Everyone's captivated. If you've got any questions, come on, bring them in. I love to chat and answer everyone's questions. It's not a problem at all. But if you want me to keep on yapping about this, that's okay, that's fine. Okay, what else to say about Parliament House, Canberra? Something else I also noted, which I won't bring into here now, and it's a little bit conspiracy theory-ish, and back in the day, probably 10 years ago, 10, 12, 15 years ago, when I started looking at and talking about Parliament House, Canberra, we did notice there were some other energy lines that ran out from Parliament House, which may have been tunnels, and they actually ran out to the west to a forest area. I won't go any further with that. But back in those days, everyone was looking for a conspiracy theory on anything to do with government, and we did find some other really interesting observations there. But you know, you wouldn't put it past those who develop a building like that to have a contingency plan for, in the event of something going horribly wrong, for the Prime Minister, a bit like the President, to get away quick for his safety, to make the decisions for the country. God help that would ever happen to us here in Australia. We're supposed to be the lucky country, maybe. Okay, so that's Parliament House. The extent of the negative psychic compression charge to Parliament House actually went to this ring road here. And if I feel the energy around all the way through here, and those of you who can read energy might pick up it's really dirty and dense. That's because there's all these energy lines coming in from all over Australia, which are negative psychic compression lines, which actually stop at this line here. And that's the extent of the harmonisers, the geoclines that are in the building, which is out to that boundary there, which is caused or due to the fact that the geoclines has a earth pin, which takes the frequency into the ground, and then the frequency neutralises the geoelectric effect in the ground, and the phenomena is it takes it to the boundaries of the property. Okay, just see if there's any more questions here. Okay, we talked about tunnels before. Someone's asking, my understanding is there are tunnels to the lodge. There probably is, but that's not really conspiracy theory stuff. That's logic. If you're going to build a capital city and put your top decision makers in there, you want to make sure that they can get around without, okay, maybe being noticed, or in the event of something horribly going wrong, that they're protected. And we all know that the governments around the world all like to go underground. It's been happening for a long time. Like if you've read the stories about what they call underground, which is what Hitler called the underground tunnel structures, which were found, I think, around the time of the Second World War, which were ancient and been there for a long time. And they were able to, the theories, conspiracy theories, and here we go back into conspiracy theories. The theory is that he escaped Germany, take the suicide, escaped Germany and got away from Germany via underground. Whether you believe that one or not, but interesting, very interesting. Okay, while we're talking about Canberra, There are a couple of other interesting things we have picked up over the years, like this little hill here has a really toxic energy. And I discovered that a long time ago while I was in Canberra doing expos, and it has an energy line running north, east, west through it, which is a fissure. And it has another fissure that runs north, south through the middle there. These diagonals, it's not really aligned to, it's really aligned to the old Parliament House, but these diagonals here don't really have anything to do with it. It's an energy line that runs that way and line runs that way. I remember being at an expo in Canberra a few years ago and explaining to a local what was going on. They were in complete denial of the whole thing. It's like, no, how could that be? How could that be? But it was just a phenomenon. It was just interesting that, like Parliament House Canberra, like the new Parliament House, that this, which I can't remember what they call. I thought they call it Capitol Hill, but they don't. Hang on, we'll find out. City Hill. This City Hill has got this arrangement of fissure grids through the centre of it too. Okay, can't talk forever about the one thing. We've been going for half an hour. We'll move on next week. Well, in 2 weeks' time, sorry. The next building we'll talk about in our next webinar will be some of the famous buildings around Washington, DC, which is not because of what's going on there at the moment. It's something I've been aware of for a long time because of the ability to actually read properties with Google Earth. I'll get out at screen share. You can see me again. Okay. So yeah, the next one will be in 2 weeks' time on some of the famous buildings in Washington, like the Capitol Building and the Jefferson Monument and the ley lines around there and the White House too. We'll be talking about dome roofs and all sorts of different things like that. So thanks for being part of today. Sorry it's a little bit shorter than the normal ones, but I'm tending to not drag things out. It's 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, so it was Poets' Day again. So I'll let you all go off and enjoy your evenings. I will say that hopefully very soon we'll be launching a new website, and which will be our 20th anniversary, which is celebrating 20 years of me being involved in intuitive building biology, and it's over 20 years since I started making my original mobile phone harmonizers and harmonizing discs I used in the old days, which were of the same technology we use now, but way different. So it's been 20 years, it's been a long time. Time flies very, very fast. So what we will be doing is releasing this, which is Stellar Dome Gold. The Stellar Dome Gold is a gold version of the Stellar Dome, but it's a limited edition. There'll only be 1,000 of them made. They'll be at the same price as a normal Stellar Dome, so we're not going to be silly and go, if you want one, you have to really pay for it. No, we don't do stupid things like that. That will be coming as part of our celebration. We've also got the orgone blankets back in stock. I'm sorry to use this as a plugging time, but just to update people via the webinars, some of the things that we've had happen in the last couple of weeks. For about 6 months, we've been out of blankets because of issues because of COVID in China and things like that. And our blanket supplier comes from China because they're the only people that make the bamboo blankets, and they're a great supplier. So please, politicians, don't start messing with the relationships with China. We need them. So the blankets are back in stock and they're a nice new bag, and we're really excited about that. We've only got cream, and the reason for cream was that we found in the end, after offering cream and mint green, everyone wanted the cream. So okay, we'll just go with the cream. If you want the mint green, scream loud enough, we might do that. Another thing we'll be doing and releasing soon is, I'll just steal it from the air. Oh, she's having a glass of wine already. Is yellow pendant. We'll call this Stellar Pendant. We've also already registered a trademark for it. This is a new development which we played around with about a month ago and did extensive testing around and went, wow, that's really good. it came off the idea of the yellow stellar dome, but there's a little story behind that which I'll explain later on. I won't spill the beans now, but this is coming to be called stellar pendant, and it's actually going to replace all the coloured pendants because we've found this to be interesting in its performance. What I'm saying is also that if you've got a coloured pendant now, don't go, oh, I just got one. Now you're saying that's better. Okay, it is, but if you've got the right colour pendant now, don't worry, you're really well protected, because if you get it matched properly to your, what I call your weakness, or your weakest link in the body, which is your weakest meridian to the organ, then the coloured pendants still did do what we always said, which was close the holes in the biofield to increase the negative charge in the biofield out to arm's length, so that radiation which has a positive charge is neutralised by the negative charge created by boosting the biofield. Like I read something only a few days ago, a few days ago, from a distributor of mine in Melbourne, who has a friend from overseas who sends him some very interesting emails. I won't go into them, but in his recent emails, he spoke about how a long time ago, the geomagnetic field around the Earth, which protects the Earth from solar winds and cosmic radiation, things like that, was 4,000 times stronger than what it is now. And he thought that was the case, whenever that was way back then, that would have meant that the Earth would have had such a high, vibrant negative charge that no solar winds, no cosmic radiation could interfere and lower the energetics of the planets, and we would have all been radiation resistant. And by the way, there would have been no radiation charge anyway. So very interesting. So thanks for joining us this week, so Friday night. I hope you all have a great weekend, and come back in 2 weeks' time and we'll talk about some interesting buildings in America, and we might lead on to some, hopefully then their website will be released too, and the 20th anniversary special. And it will also lead on to what we'll be doing in the webinar after that. So have a great weekend and enjoy it and stay safe. Thank you.